Hey everyone, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News, and we're joining you live right now across Fox social media platforms to give you an update from the Middle East about what we know as it relates to the situation in Iran, the negotiations that happened on Tuesday in Geneva, Switzerland, and to answer any questions you might have about a large U.S. military buildup across the region. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of background about what we know, how we got here, and what to expect in the days and weeks ahead. And if you have any questions, be sure to put them in the comments below, and I'll answer as many as possible. And so to start off here, right now the entire region is on the brink of a possible large conflict. We are seeing a massive amount of U.S. military equipment deployed to the region. Reports indicate over the past 24 hours alone, more than 50 U.S. fighter jets were deployed to the Middle East. We've seen tankers deployed to the Al-Udeid air base in Qatar. We have seen a number of U.S. Navy assets moving into position, and a real understanding that if things fail at the negotiating table, the U.S. could take direct military action against Iran. Remember, there's also a U.S. aircraft carrier very close in the Arabian Sea, and then also the USS Gerald R. Ford on the way to the region, was recently spotted off the coast of Morocco and is expected to get into position in the Mediterranean Sea by Sunday. And so all of this is taking shape amid the backdrop of the negotiations. And we saw yesterday a delegation from Iran that was led by Iran's foreign minister meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, indirectly with U.S. mediators, including U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And after that meeting that was led by Omani officials, you had both sides saying that some progress was made, but a U.S. official told me that there were a lot of details that still had to be worked out and that Iran planned to return with more detailed proposals over the next 2 weeks. There are officials here in Israel who say that it doesn't matter what happens at the negotiating table, given the red lines that have been drawn by both the United States and Iran. Many officials here believe that war could happen in a matter of days, and so the military posture across the region certainly remains high. Again, if you're just joining right now, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. We're joining you live from the Middle East across Fox social media platforms. And if you have any questions for me, I'm going to answer them. You can put them in the comments below, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So the first question that we have here is, if the Iranians refuse to dismantle their nuclear equipment by the next round of talks, is the U.S. ready to authorize a military strike? Vice President JD Vance was interviewed on Fox yesterday, and he said all options are on the table, but ultimately it will be a decision made by President Trump. Now, we understand, according to Iranian state media, that yesterday in Geneva, some technical details were discussed, including uranium enrichment levels and also stockpile levels. You might remember last summer there was a 12-day war between Israel and Iran, and that ultimately ended with an operation called Midnight Hammer, where President Trump ordered strikes against Iran's nuclear program, significantly damaging the program. And while it was heavily damaged, there is believed to still be some enriched uranium buried underground. The Iranians have indicated they're trying to rebuild things that were destroyed during that war. And there are more threats that are coming out each and every day from top Iranian leadership, including Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, basically directly threatening the U.S. Navy. Yesterday, he threatened to sink U.S. warships, and we've heard similar sentiment from other Iranian leaders. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has taken a more diplomatic tone, saying that they're ready to compromise on the issue of nuclear negotiations. What no Iranian leader has mentioned is a number of other agenda items, you could call them, for the United States and for Israel that officials here and in Washington say have to be discussed. One of those has to do with Iran's expanding ballistic missile program that we saw in action during the 12-day war, and also two separate times in the year before, in the spring and also in October of the year prior, in 2024, where the Iranians can launch ballistic missiles and hit major population centers here in Israel. They can also target U.S. bases across the region, as they did, hitting the Al-Udeid base in Qatar in response to the strikes that took place last summer. So you have the ballistic missile program. You also have Iran's support of regional proxies like Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. And then you also have what is of big concern to the entire world, a crackdown on protesters that we know led to the deaths of thousands of Iranian civilians earlier this year when they were demonstrating against the government. The next question is, why does Israel think the talks are doomed? The Israelis understand, having a lot of experience in the region, that oftentimes the Iranians say they're willing to compromise, but then once they're at the negotiating table, they use stall tactics to basically drag out the talks and then never reach an agreement. And they're concerned that's what's going to happen now. They're also concerned that the negotiations are only going to focus on the nuclear program in Iran that, again, is heavily damaged in the aftermath of the strikes last summer. Israel wants to address Iran's ballistic missile program primarily, understanding that they are one of the most significant countries under threat from that very program. The next question is, if they are rebuilding, was President Trump's strike not as successful as previously thought? I interviewed President Trump when he was visiting Israel last year, and when I spoke with the president, he talked about the significance of these strikes, saying that the program was destroyed, and they were able to target a number of very deep facilities that the Iranians had buried underground in an effort to avoid being targeted in strikes. But the U.S. used bunker buster bombs to get into those facilities through air shafts. And the president told me that they were very successful in doing so. We don't know the true amount of damage because it is so far underground. It's also very difficult to get new information out of Iran, just given the fact that not only was the internet blacked out earlier this year, but also it's very hard to get access to the Iranian regime and to officials there who can speak with authority on the country's nuclear program. Again, if you're just joining right now, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the Fox News chief foreign correspondent. We are reporting live right now from the Middle East across Fox social media platforms. Be sure to share this video with your friends and your followers so that they can be updated as to what's happening in the region right now. Again, we are seeing an unprecedented military buildup taking place in the Middle East. And you also have many C-17 and C-5 flights coming to the region, an indication that not only Israel, but other countries that house American troops, for example, are bolstering air defense systems. There are a lot of flights that are carrying the ability of Patriot missile defense systems and THAAD systems. And of course, here in Israel, you have the Iron Dome, you have David's Sling, and you have the Arrow system that can be used to shoot down incoming fire. But there is coordinated preparation, I'm told by sources in the region, between the Americans and the Israelis, understanding that if these talks fail, or if President Trump makes a decision to strike Iran, it could lead to a weeks-long campaign against the Islamic Republic. The next question is, does it seem like Iran is likely to embrace war or accept an ultimatum based on the talks? It's very difficult to tell. They say they are open to negotiating, but again, officials have seen behind the scenes what their red lines are, and they know whether or not they're going to be able to reach a deal broadly. And so they could come back with more detailed plans. But the question is, will it lead to an agreement that satisfies U.S. and Israeli officials who, again, are working together as it relates to the broader threat from Iran? And so you have to understand what we know about the talks in Geneva is really just a small portion of what actually took place in those mediated conversations by Omani officials. Remember, there was a first round of talks that took place in Muscat, Oman in early February, and these talks were a follow-up on those conversations. Just because there are talks unfolding, though, doesn't mean that there isn't going to be military action. We saw that last year whenever there was going to be a sixth round of talks in Oman, and then ultimately the military action was taken by the Israelis and ultimately the United States, and that drew a lot of ballistic missile fire toward this country. At the time, more than 20 people were killed, buildings destroyed, and a lot of damage to major population centers. The next question is, can diplomacy succeed when neither side will budge on core demands? This is what the Israelis have been saying. They say they don't think diplomacy will succeed, and officials here are telling reporters that they are preparing for war, possibly in the days ahead. When war happens here, we've been here so many times reporting over the past 8 years, nearly, since I've been based here in the Middle East, and we have seen this ongoing back and forth, not only on the diplomatic side, but also when it comes to military action. There's an understanding that with such a large ballistic missile arsenal, and there is still believed to be more than 1,000 ballistic missiles in the Iranian arsenal, that it is a significant threat to Israel. You also have the issue of ballistic missile launchers, and anywhere from 1 to 2/3 of those launchers were destroyed during the 12-day war last June, but still they have the ability to fire not just on Israel, but again on bases that house American troops across the region. The current estimates are about 30 to 40,000 U.S. forces that are currently deployed across the Middle East. And remember, you have the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group that is currently in the Arabian Sea. You have the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, that is expected to be in place in the Mediterranean by Sunday. And you have a variety of U.S. destroyers in places like the Red Sea, off the coast of Iran, and in close proximity to the USS Abraham Lincoln in preparation for if the United States decides to strike Iran, they could fire Tomahawk missiles into Iranian territory. We have seen this type of action take place before, and again, that's what the region is preparing for today. Someone says, with thousands being killed in recent protests in Iran, is the U.S. using the regime's instability as leverage in these talks? They are likely looking at the current situation on the ground, understanding that Iran is actually far weaker than it was last year, and certainly far weaker than it was before October 7th of 2023. You might remember we were on the ground here on Black Saturday reporting amid the massacre that Hamas launched against southern Israel. And when that happened, it set off a domino effect across the region that ultimately led to a direct war between Israel and Hezbollah, Iran's largest proxy in the region, and that's the militant group in southern Lebanon, and then also Israel and the Houthis in Yemen that have missiles and drones in their own arsenal that they have fired at Israel many times, especially last year. In response, the U.S. struck a variety of targets in Yemen, as did the Israelis. That weakened the Houthis' ability to launch attacks against Israel, but certainly didn't defeat the capability. But then also Hezbollah. You remember Hassan Nasrallah was taken out in an Israeli bombardment in the Dakhla neighborhood of southern Beirut. There is a significant loss of capability for Iran's largest proxy. You also have Iran-backed Iraqi and Syrian Shia militias, but they also have been hit in the past 2.5 years. And so Iran's ability to use their proxies, which were largely considered one of their biggest pieces of leverage at a possible negotiation, have been decimated in many ways. And so it changes the dynamic here. And certainly President Trump and his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, are looking at that. They understand that the regime was under a lot of pressure when those demonstrations happened earlier this year. And in response, they killed thousands of demonstrators. And we shouldn't forget that. We have to remember that earlier this year, the Iranians were open firing on their civilians, killing thousands of people. And that is actually what led to this new round of tension and this massive military buildup that we're currently seeing today across the region. Again, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. But if you're just tuning in now, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News, and we are reporting live from the Middle East. If you're watching this video now, whether you're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, X, or Facebook, be sure to share this video with your audience so that they can be updated on the current situation across the region. And again, if you have questions, you can put them in the comments below. But we're currently looking at an overview of the U.S. military buildup in the region with the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, headed to position in the Mediterranean, likely to be there by Sunday, according to initial reports. You have the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group in the Arabian Sea. You have U.S. destroyers in a number of locations. There is a constant flow of American military equipment headed into the region. As we speak right now, there are more planes headed into position in the Middle East in what's being described by some as the largest military buildup since the Gulf War. And so when you look at all of this, it's a clear indication that the United States is preparing for the possibility of military action. And while these diplomatic efforts are happening behind the scenes, it doesn't mean that action will not be taken. And so, again, to conclude here, we are going to continue covering this story on Fox News. I'd encourage you to tune in to our programming throughout the day and night. We have not just reporters and correspondents on the ground across the world. We have our teams in Washington and New York who are interviewing politicians and the decision makers in all of this. And just yesterday, Vice President JD Vance on Martha McCallum's show at 3 p.m. talking about these negotiations and what the president is thinking as it relates to the situation with Iran. So again, thank you for tuning in. My name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. I'd encourage you to follow us on all social media platforms, share this video, and of course, watch the Fox News channel as this story in the Middle East develops.